Another related question in the phase one is that what's the composition of the team in terms of seniority? Do you optimize for more senior experienced engineers to come in at that stage?
It's a good question. We ended up with not a super senior team. I think it was one of the things that I always would talk about as kind of, for better or worse, there wasn't a ton of like staff level or principal level engineers that had joined at that stage. A lot of the people that joined were earlier career or mid career that wanted to take a bigger risk and be part of a hyper growth phase company. For whatever reason, I think risk takers are fine without liquidity for a while. And I think generally your more senior engineers are at larger companies where there's liquidity. So that was one thing that we just found is like in the market when we would talk to candidates, there weren't the sort of Venn diagram between senior engineers and senior engineers that want to take a bigger risk on an early stage company is pretty low. But at the same time, I think we wanted to find folks that were really passionate, really willing to take risks, but also, give them the benefits of having high ownership and taking on larger areas than they might at a bigger company, right? And so it's kind of a give and get, right? If you're going to take that risk, it's nice to have really a lot of upside in terms of the types of projects you can take on and how quickly you can grow your career. And we very much saw that. I think there's folks that graduated maybe 1 or 2 years out of college that are now architecture leads at Plaid because they've been able to scale with the company and take on larger and larger projects. And you wouldn't really have that opportunity at a larger company.
I was about to jump in and ask, like, this is similar to your story, but I'm withholding that question, Samir, so much right now. But just to complete the picture of like some of the evolution story, like what I guess now would be sort of categorized as phase three. What does that look like now? Bring us into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, going from phase two to phase three, you start to see the ecosystem changing, and the ecosystem is kind of pulling you into phase three. So, phase two is very much like still single product, single type of customer. But as we've matured, we've added a ton of different lines of business. So now we have a domestic and international business. We have products that are facing developers, products that are facing consumers, products that are facing banks. We have sort of mature flagship products and then a bunch of new products in the pipeline. So the product line is becoming pretty vast. At the same time, customers are becoming really mature. A lot of our customers, you mentioned the Super Bowl, a lot of our customers have become multi-billion-dollar companies. Fintech as a space is growing really quickly. So it just means that we have to mature as a company. And so we need to start thinking about our platform and our products on a multi-year time frame because so many customers, businesses are really depending on what we're doing. Changes are very disruptive for them. And the banking ecosystem itself is changing quite rapidly with banks rolling out OAuth. So we're at this phase where we really need to start operating our business in terms of independent business units that can understand the change of the ecosystem and how we sort of manage through that change, but also move really quickly, right? And so that also leads us to a pretty heavy investment in platforms this year in order to allow our business units to still be independent, but not be bottlenecked on internal infrastructure.
Was it clear in the moment the changes of the business? Like, was there ever a delineated time where it's like, oh, we're moving to phase two, or has it been just all in hindsight, putting it all together, seeing the phase changes?
Yeah, I think anyone that says they did all this intentionally and designed it all up front is probably lying. But no, I think of organizational maturity as really like a lagging indicator of your success as a business, and not the other way around, right? You don't in phase one say we're going to set up teams and business units in like the expectation of success. It just doesn't work that way. And technical maturity is kind of the same thing. It doesn't really matter how mature your systems are unless you get to product market fit. So technical maturity should really be downstream of that. But once you get there, you really need to like have a plan to amp the maturity of your systems. And then culture, I think you do design a little more intentionally. And I think at the early stage, it almost matters the most. And so I think that's where you are intentional upfront. And so, that's probably the biggest thing that you design upfront or think about upfront. But the rest, I think, is kind of a little bit 2020 vision.